Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Diane Hayden, and I am the publisher and owner of Natural Nutmeg magazine. And this is our series of lunch and learn video calls with our expert writers and contributors for Natural Nutmeg. Some of these are going to be focused on how to cope with the COVID-19 situation, and others are just going to be uplifting interviews about topics related to natural therapies and how to live a more holistic lifestyle with tips you can easily integrate into your daily life. So I'm excited today to be with Dr. Katy Firisin. She is a naturopathic doctor, owner, and medical director of Coastal Natural Medicine in Southport, Connecticut. She's also the assistant to the president and curriculum chair for the Naturopathic Medicine Institute. So thanks for being with us today, Katy. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
Awesome, awesome. So Katy writes really awesome, informative articles for us. Her most recent one was on the gut microbiome in our March issue. So you can get that on naturalnutmeg.com. And so we thought we would do actually like a combination today of, what you're seeing in your practice and what you're recommending for people related to prevention of COVID-19. And then we can kind of go into how that relates to gut function. Because I know when I first started learning about how important the gut was, and I think that still a lot of people are not aware of this. It's amazing to me, like how many interrelated concepts there are between the gut and immune function, and really just all the bodily functions, that we
Mhm.
have. And I think it's something that people don't initially think of as being something that they need to, take care of or be aware of or, focus on. But it really is. I mean, your article was amazing, and it really is something that we all need to be more cognizant of for sure.
Right. The thing that's interesting about gut health is people really think about it related to their bowel movements or having abdominal pain or an actual gut symptom. But it's really important to recognize the impact of the gut health on really any disease process and any potential diagnosis symptom that we might be having. So it's great to have opportunities to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, it totally makes sense when you do think about it, though. I mean, anything that you're putting into your mouth, digestion. I mean, we've heard
Mhm.
the saying, "You are what you eat." And
Right.
so obviously, that is going to play a role in all kinds of things,
Hmm.
as simple as, just how we metabolize food to how we use that energy to then the more complicated things when we start seeing people who have gut issues such as leaky gut or
Right.
IBS or all those kinds of things. So I guess let's just start with you can relate this to if you are relating it to gut function or not. Like, what are you seeing in your practice, and what kinds of things are you recommending for your patients in terms of prevention of COVID-19 or treatment or, just
Mhm.
dealing with it, maybe even on, like a stress level?
Right. I think that's a really important connection to make. One of the main things that gut health is important to understand with relation to COVID-19 is the function of the immune system. So several things impact the immune system, but gut health and the microbes in the gut and the inflammation of the gut really impact our body's ability to fight off things from the outside environment. So if you think about it, the gut, the enteric system, when you open your mouth and all the way down till we eliminate, is the only direct connection of the internal environment to the outside world. So the health of that gut really creates a barrier for us in many ways to what's going on in the outside world. And the bacteria in our gut are like a little army. They kind of have a turf war with the bad bacteria. So anything, and when I say it's not just bacteria, it's all microbes in the environment. So you have bacteria, you have virus, you have fungus. Those things in the outside world can colonize and create havoc on the gut. So keeping our gut healthy is really important with regard to our immune system. The piece that's really important to understand with stress right now, and that's what I'm seeing in practice, is the anxiety levels and the stress levels through the roof right now. Cortisol is a hormone in our body that increases when we're under stress. Cortisol decreases the blood flow to the gut by 4 times, and it can decrease our production of enzymes by up to 20,000 times. So when we have that increase in stress, we're automatically decreasing the blood flow to our gut. We're going to decrease our absorption of nutrients. We're going to decrease our ability to break down foods, and we're going to decrease what nutrition and what metabolic processes we're getting from those good, healthy gut bacteria. So that stress response related to our gut is going to impact our immune system. So really making sure that we're managing our stress response right now is really critical. And I'm finding that's what I'm dealing with in practice the most, is patients who just have this anxiety and stress about what's going on.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and the news doesn't help.
No.
But yeah, I mean, I feel
Exactly.
like, and I'm not a person we've probably talked about this, I never watch the news. I'm just one of those people that's like, my mother texts me and she tells me what's going on every day. So, but now I found myself feeling like I need to watch a little bit just so I can stay abreast of I mean, everything is changing so quickly day to day
Right.
that I need to stay on top of that. But so now that I've gotten back into that habit, I guess I'll call it,
Mhm.
I'm aware of, wow, like there is just so much fear and,
Mhm.
anxiety being pushed out there to people.
Right.
And I feel like, gosh, I don't want to tell people, don't watch it, because I do feel like we need to stay informed, but it's
Mhm.
almost like, okay, watch it for maybe 15 or 20 minutes a day.
Right.
They just keep playing the same thing over and over again. That's what I've
Yeah.
noticed too. From
Yeah,
like
I think
one hour to the next.
watching one update a day, I think, is reasonable.
Right.
But when you look at the impact of that on our health, every time you watch the news, your cortisol level is going to increase, your heart rate's going to increase, your blood pressure is going to increase. Those things are all going to increase inflammation. So we're going to see, inability to sleep, inability to focus. We're going to see, body aches, joint aches and pains increase. And our overall sort of focus and productivity is going to decrease. And that's going to make us more susceptible from an immune standpoint. And it's going to wreak more havoc on our gut. So in terms of what we can do in the face of this right now, there's a lot of mixed information out there about natural therapies and how can you treat COVID-19 or prevent COVID-19 naturally. And the really important thing for us all to be saying is that no one can say definitively that anything really prevents or will fight COVID-19 naturally, because nobody knows. It's a new virus to the human species, and we're all working on figuring that out as we go. What we can do is look at principles of supporting the immune system and other principles that we know from other viruses and illnesses that we treat, and using those same principles in the face of COVID-19 in a responsible way. And that's a really important thing, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. People are making claims about what can and cannot treat COVID-19. What I know as a naturopath is that there are tried and true methods that we use to support the immune system. Sleep is really important. What we put in our bodies is really important. We know sugar decreases our white blood cell count for a period of time after we consume sugar. Again, it's going to increase the inflammation in the gut. Managing the stress. So doing things that are going to decrease that stress response, decrease those cortisol levels. We know meditation does that. We know exercise does that. Breathing exercises. Naturopaths use a treatment called constitutional hydrotherapy that can be really helpful in boosting your overall vitality, your overall body's strength. So that can be really useful in supporting the body. And there's different ways to do that. Diet obviously is really important. Getting lots of fruits and vegetables. You can get a lot of the nutrients, the vitamin C, the zinc, those things you can get from your foods. And there are natural treatments that can be supportive if you were to get sick, the same way that you would use them with a cold or a flu. But the most important thing for prevention is that we're supporting our immune system globally in all aspects of our health. And again, the gut's a really important piece of that. So making sure you're taking a good quality probiotic, drinking a lot of water, avoiding the sugars, keeping the stress level down, making sure you're having good bowel movements. If you don't have good bowel movements, if you're having diarrhea or constipation or a lot of abdominal cramping, that's telling you that there's inflammation in your gut and that needs to be addressed. And certainly I can help patients with that. Healing the gut right now would be a great thing to do, because you're going to be eliminating all that toxicity. You're going to be improving your body's ability to deal with the outside environment. And that's going to decrease inflammation throughout your whole system.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, the other thing I'm thinking is, like I said to you earlier, like I always try to see things as an opportunity. Well, to me, this is a great opportunity for people who are at home more, which we all are,
Mhm.
not eating out in restaurants. I mean, maybe doing takeout once in a while. I fluctuate because I want to support them. I don't want them to all go out of business, but at the same time, I think we definitely, more of us need to be,
Right.
cooking more at home and making more of
Mhm.
our foods at home and knowing what goes into those foods and that kind of thing. So
Right.
it's an opportunity to really be able to overhaul your diet with the types of things that you're eating, and also the way that you cook. And like you said, this is a great time to heal your gut by those things for sure.
Mhm. Absolutely. I think it's also important to sort of give a shout out to people like myself right now that are actually finding themselves more stressed and more busy than normal. So there's a lot of pressure on Facebook right now that is sort of speaking to people who are sitting home twiddling their thumbs. And I don't
Right.
think any of us are home doing that right now. I think the idea of watching a virtual tour of a national park is lovely right now, but I personally don't have time to even think about sitting in front of the TV and doing something like that. But those of us that are finding ourselves really busy still need to take, 15 minutes to do a brief guided meditation. And I'm happy to post a couple of links on my Facebook page of things that I like. Um, or maybe looking at ordering one supplement that might be helpful, maybe a probiotic right now if you don't already take a probiotic to help with your gut. Doing something proactive for your health is really important, and movement is really important right now. Even people who aren't necessarily exercisers, a lot of things geared on the internet right now are toward people who already do yoga or already do workouts at the gym. And then, okay, now you have this online version of that. But there's a lot of people who are losing just day-to-day movement, the amount of movement and steps that you get from walking from your car into work every day and then back again, or walking your kid to the bus stop and back. Those steps are causing us all to be more sedentary. Even if you're not a real exerciser and you don't have to go to the gym 5 days a week, to be losing some of that movement. So 15 minutes to just walk around the block, something that's going to help your health. Again, it doesn't have to be 2 hours a day of this committed health regimen, or coming up with all these smoothie recipes, but definitely, like you said, cooking some healthful foods. I've been doing some cooking in batches and then putting things in the freezer. All of those things are really important in terms of looking at our day to day and really giving ourselves a break, being patient with ourselves. And Facebook and social media, as always, creates an environment where we feel less than or inadequate, like somehow we're not keeping up with everybody else. And this is unfortunately one of those times, again, in the face of a crisis, that everyone is feeling like other people are doing a better job of being home. And I know that sounds silly. So everybody needs to really take a deep breath and give ourselves a break for doing the best that we can.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, to me, social media is almost like regular media. I mean, 15 minutes a day and get off. But you're right. It's like, what do you mean you haven't written that book yet? Or what do
Right.
you mean like you haven't, run that marathon or whatever it is? You're right. Exactly. Like I see a lot of that on social media too.
Mhm.
And I really feel like, I keep coming back to saying that this is an opportunity. I mean, I really feel
Mhm.
like part of the purpose, if you need to understand why this is happening, for me this helps, is that globally I feel like we need to slow down.
Yes.
We need to like take more time to just sit and be quiet. And believe me, like, for people who know me, like, I don't want to do that. I'm always on the go. I'm always want to travel here, go there, go do this, do that. And
Right.
so now we're kind of being forced to just sit in the house, or
Mhm.
go we have the opportunity to go within. And it's uncomfortable for some people, and we want to just keep busy, whether it's scrolling through social media or watching the news or putting
Mhm.
pressure on ourselves to do a project or whatever. But I
Right.
don't think that's what it's all about. I think it's more about, okay, let's just take time to sit with whatever this feeling is and realize that it will pass.
Right.
And just like this whole thing will pass,
Mhm.
that's part of the lesson, I think.
Right.
And I love what you said about the exercise too. I do actually see a lot of people outside walking their dogs, and then you see all the funny memes on Facebook about the dogs who are exhausted. because they've had 6 walks.
Yes.
So I think we actually are, I'm grateful at least that the weather in Connecticut is great. And, we could be under 6 feet of snow right now
Oh my
in the end of
gosh.
March.
Or it could be 100 degrees out with really,
Oh,
really high humidity. And that
in
could
Arizona,
even,
yes.
yes. But even here, if this was a really warm late July day and people
Yeah.
with already, have respiratory issues or difficulty breathing in times like that, they're not going to go outside and walk. So we are blessed. And I think it's incredible to look around and look at the blooms. Things are blooming. There's hope outside. It's a fresh start for all of us when this clears, and it's not going to last forever. I think that's a really important thing to remember.
Right.
As far
Exactly.
as our health, looking at that stress response and how it relates to chronic illness is really important. We see a huge increase in autoimmune disease, and the connection between the autoimmune disease and the gut health is really important. And then we see the connection between the stress and how that, as I mentioned, impacts our gut health with the blood flow to the gut and the cortisol levels. There are actually cells in the gut that produce serotonin called enterochromaffin cells. So if you imagine there's inflammation in the gut and not enough blood flow to the gut, and the cells that produce serotonin are in the gut, we're going to potentially have a decrease in serotonin production and inadequacy there, which can contribute to stress response and mood issues, depression, anxiety. All of those things circle back to chronic inflammation and chronic disease. So those pieces are so important, and this is a great opportunity, like you said, to start. But remember, baby steps, make small changes, pick one thing that you can change, one thing at a time, and don't feel like you have to, just because you're home, somehow be on this, full-fledged health regimen in 3 weeks by the time you go back to work or back to school or whatever it might be.
Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned earlier, one of your recommendations was taking a probiotic, and I wanted to touch on that a little bit because I think you did a great job of explaining the difference between probiotics and prebiotics in your article in our March issue. So I just wanted to touch on that a little bit because I think that is something that people get confused about. Like, what's the difference, and why would I take one or both, or when, and that kind of thing?
Sure. The probiotic is the actual microbe. It's the bacteria that's in our gut. We have a colony of bacteria in our gut. We have several of them, actually. We have one on our skin, we have them in our nose, in our lungs, and we have a colony of bacteria in our gut. And that can even be further broken down into 3 different colonies throughout the gut, the whole GI tract. When you take a probiotic, you're looking to replenish and support the good bacteria so that there's a colony that continues to grow and thrive. That bacteria is responsible for, again, part of our immune function. It actually functions to create certain nutrients and amino acids. Some of our B vitamins are actually produced by the bacteria in our gut. So it's really important that we have a healthy colony of bacteria, and taking a probiotic is helping to replenish that. There's lots of things that diminish that. And some of us actually start out with that slightly depleted. So babies that are born through C-sections don't have as much of that colonization that they get from their mother. That is all passed through the vaginal canal to the baby, and that's how babies start to colonize their own gut bacteria. And so that is something, as we get older, as we take antibiotics, as we eat really poor foods, we're exposed to toxins, we're under stress, those things can decrease that colonization. So taking a probiotic helps to replenish and maintain that good colony of bacteria. A prebiotic, essentially, you want to just think of that as food for the microbes. So the prebiotic is a certain type of fiber that's found in many of our foods that helps to feed and supply the probiotics with nutrients. Most people are going to get enough prebiotics in their diet if they're eating a healthy diet, including fruits and vegetables. But you could take a supplement that generally is a fiber supplement. So a supplement that has prebiotics and probiotics in it together generally has the microbes, it has the bacteria, plus a fiber of some kind.
That's great. Yeah, yeah. Um, Well, also you mentioned, why our good bacteria might be reduced. Also, I think that, people who have taken a lot of antibiotics, or things like Advil, that kind of thing, you find
Mhm.
often they have less of their good bacteria as well.
Any over the counter or prescription medication has the potential to decrease the amount of bacteria that we have in our gut. Those things can be damaging. We don't really know to what extent. There's so much about the gut microbiome that they're discovering, day by day. But we do know that yes, so things like NSAIDs, things like Advil, Tylenol, those things actually can decrease the good bacteria in our gut. We
Yeah.
also have bacteria in our gut. Some of those bad bacteria are supposed to be there. So some people have heard of candida, for example. Candida is a fungal microbe that's found in the gut. And we all have some level of candida. But when when the good bacteria is depleted, the bad bacteria is opportunistic. So it sees a window to grow and overpopulate. So we want to make sure that we have a balance. That's why I mentioned the idea of the turf war, because you kind of have these two gangs of microbes, and the good ones keep the bad ones in check. And when those bad ones get depleted, or the good ones get depleted, the bad ones can increase and create other health problems. The other thing that's important to remember is when you buy a probiotic, you want to make sure you're looking at a good quality probiotic. So probiotics are often put in the refrigerator, so there is a temperature sensitivity, but they're also sensitive to light. So a good quality probiotic is going to be put into probably a brown glass or a blue glass jar. You want to look for the collection of bacteria, the total number of units. On the label, it will say how many billion count are in the bacteria in the probiotic, and you want that to be at least 10 billion. And then you want a diverse number of strains of bacteria. So if you look on the label of a probiotic, you'll see the actual names. Lactobacillus, bifidobacteria, those are common names that you'll see on a label. And you want to have many different strains listed. There's a couple of popular probiotics that are often recommended, and they really only have about 5 billion units of bacteria, and they only really have one or two in terms of the diversity of the strains in the probiotic. So the more count and the more diversity of the strains, the better the probiotic.
I'm really glad you said that, because I wanted to remember to bring up, the fact or question. You did mention this in your article too, about why it's probably not the best. Yogurt is probably not the best place to be getting your probiotics from. And I think there's a lot of misinformation about that. I mean, certainly there's a ton of marketing towards it. And I think that, general consumers are led to believe that, oh, just eat a yogurt a day and you'll be fine. You're getting your probiotics, which is not the case.
Right. Foods that have live cultures and are fermented have great benefit to our health. So, and they do contain probiotics. Fermented foods have been part of historical cultures for centuries. You've got sauerkraut, people now drink kombucha, they make kimchi, and yogurt is a fermented food. Our mass-produced yogurt now very often contains a lot of sugar. It's made from dairy, and a lot of people don't tolerate dairy. So if you do happen to have a dairy intolerance and not know it, and you're eating yogurt every day, that's something that you should really be looking into. And it's not enough. So again, the diversity of those cultures, we just don't know. And a lot of them are not necessarily live cultures. So even when you buy sauerkraut, you want to make sure on the jar of sauerkraut that it says that there are live cultures in order to really use that as your source of probiotic. If you make fermented foods at home, that's certainly going to be a much better source of probiotics, as long as you're making them well and you know what you're doing and
Right.
you're keeping those cultures alive. But most people are going to benefit from a probiotic supplement. And honestly, it's certainly something I would recommend talking to a naturopath about if you have questions. I don't like to make general recommendations across the board. Everyone's going to have unique needs. But in general, having that external source of probiotic is really important, because in the world we live in today, most people have depleted that good bacteria.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and the other thing that I was just thinking about, which this is like a whole nother call discussion. But using that from the perspective of just having better digestion in dealing with things like acid reflux and, those kinds of symptoms. I mean, I see so many people just doing things, taking Prilosec or some sort of, traditional medical thing. And it's like, no, you don't want to be, that's like achieving the opposite of what you want. And so, I think just taking, probiotics and doing other things to help, like you said, just promote better digestion. We've mostly been talking about it in relation to immune function or autoimmune, that kind of thing, but also just from this perspective as well, like, simple things like acid reflux and how to treat that.
Absolutely. Yes. So acid reflux is a funny thing I find myself talking to patients about a lot. And any of my patients who might see this that have dealt with this with me in treatment will remember the little drawing that I make of the stomach and how I educate patients about reflux. But conventional medicine will look at reflux as an acid problem, meaning there's too much acid. So the treatments are directed at decreasing the acid. When you look at the stomach and the sphincter at the bottom of the esophagus that's supposed to close and keep the contents in the stomach, I call that the lid, putting the lid on the pot. So we eat food, goes into our stomach, which is the pot, and then this sphincter is supposed to close. Physiologically, what actually triggers that sphincter to close is hydrochloric acid. So if things are coming back up, that means the lid's not going on the pot, and that's what irritates the esophagus. That's why we get GERD symptoms. So I actually treat patients with GERD by giving them more hydrochloric acid and not giving them an acid blocker. And obviously looking at food intolerances, restoring the things that cause inflammation in the first place and dealing with healing up the gut. But I look at using bitter herbs that stimulate digestion. I actually give people enzymes, give people hydrochloric acid. Very often that helps to resolve the symptoms of reflux. So when we really work with the body, when we recognize what the body's trying to do on its own and support that process, that's where we can see improvement in health. We don't want to just manage a symptom. So if you do have any sort of gut issue, if you have reflux, if you have just pain, cramping, urgency, diarrhea, constipation, whatever it is, reaching for something, even a natural treatment that can still be used in a conventional way. A good example is senna is an herb that's often used or said that will help constipation, and it will help symptomatically, but it's not getting to the root of the problem, and it's not restoring the normal body function. So one of the things that's really important when we look at gut health, if you're going to do anything right now in terms of looking at improving your health, if you want to come in to see me as a patient, if you want to do a full evaluation of your gut health and figure out where is it going wrong, where is the problem area, and then look to fix that. That's where your treatment, that's where your supplements, that's where your diet changes should be directed at actually restoring health, restoring function, and optimizing that function so that the rest of your health can improve along with the gut.
Yeah. I was just thinking, as you mentioned, some of the issues. Look, we don't talk about constipation much at all. I feel like that kind of gets missed in a lot of certainly the content that we deliver. I feel like, most of our experts have written on, everything from IBS to, autoimmune to those kinds of things related to the gut, but we don't talk about something as simple as constipation and what people can do for that.
Interestingly enough, constipation is a symptom of IBS. We often associate IBS with only diarrhea, but people who have IBS can have either diarrhea IBS, constipation IBS, or what they call mixed IBS, which some people fluctuate. They'll be constipated 1 week and then they'll have 3 or 4 days of diarrhea. So constipation is considered by definition can be a symptom of IBS. In general, IBS is a catch-all term. So whatever gut dysfunction you have is, it's still related to an underlying issue. And IBS is sort of a name I think they give it when they can't figure out from a conventional standpoint what's really going on. But it's not normal to skip bowel movements, and it's not normal to skip bowel movements for days at a time. I have a lot of patients who come in and I ask all of my patients about their poop. Some people Some people just don't pay attention to their poop at all. They have no concept. I say, well, what does it look like? Or does it come out in one piece? You know, do you have to strain? Do you ever see any blood in your stool? And people don't even look. But it's not normal to skip bowel movements for days at a time. And I have patients who come in and I say, you know, how often or how many times a day do you have a bowel movement? And they say, oh, twice a week. I've been like that for the last 20 years. And that's not necessarily okay. So it's really important to understand in the big picture of someone's health what that bowel function is contributing to and where the inflammation is.
Yeah, definitely. Um, just one quick, I have another question, but before that, like any recommendations for people who do suffer from constipation? Like what, I mean, to me, the obvious thing would be that they're probably dehydrated, but anything else that you want to mention as far as their diet or nutrition?
You would be really surprised how many people really aren't drinking enough water. So water is really important. Increasing your fiber intake, you want to shoot for probably around 45 grams of fiber a day. So increasing your fruits and vegetable consumption can make a big difference. Stress is really important. So we go back to the meditation, we look at the effects of that cortisol on the gut and the movement of the intestine. So we have what's called peristalsis, which is the natural movement of the intestine that moves the stool through, and that can be impaired by stress. So again, managing your stress can be really important in terms of constipation. There's, simple things like magnesium can help, but again, that's a little more symptomatic. But if you're really struggling, you might try, getting some magnesium or something like that. There's a couple of teas that can be helpful. That if you look at, I think traditional medicinals is one of them, Gaia herb, yogi, they all make condition-specific teas. And teas are nice because they're very gentle, and again, I'm not saying everybody should go take a bunch of teas to cure illness, but because they're gentle, they're a nice way in some cases to get relief. But for the most part, figuring out the cause of the constipation is really, really key. So doing food intolerance evaluations with patients, putting them through a gut healing protocol and resolving that issue is really how to fix it. There are, like I said, there's some things, and I use a lot of homeopathy. There's some homeopathic remedies that are really great for constipation. But fixing the underlying issue is how to resolve that in the end.
Yeah, exactly. Also, I just wanted to mention as far as eating certain fruits and vegetables, more of the fiber is going to be found in the skin in a lot of these fruits and things like that too. So it may not necessarily just be any kind of fruit and vegetable, but ones that have a lot of fiber and, in the skin.
Yeah, definitely look to the skins for certain fiber, but whole grains have fiber in them, like oatmeal, any kind of leafy green. It doesn't have to be a vegetable that has a skin on it. Our nutrition professor in med school used to make us laugh because she would talk about potato skins, that people, go to a restaurant, they get a big potato, they only eat the inside part and they don't eat the skin. And how she would get so mad, she'd walk around and see all these leftover skins on the plates and want to go, collect them because that's where all the nutrition is. So definitely eat, some potato skin or some sweet potato skin. Those are areas where you're going to get more nutrients. But just overall increased consumption of fruits and vegetables is going to generally give you enough fiber. And like I said, you want to target that 45 grams ish, give or take. Some people will be fine with a little less. Some people need more than that. I do like apple pectin fiber as a fiber supplement. So a lot of fiber supplements will have psyllium fiber, which can be kind of harsh on the digestive tract. So I really like apple pectin fiber. I tend to recommend that to patients if I am supplementing fiber. You can get it. There's not that many companies that make it. Now brand is one of the companies that makes apple pectin fiber, and you can pick that up over the counter. Now is that brand that's like the bright orange and purple bottle. And just one of those has, I think, 700, don't quote me on that. I think it's 700 milligrams, but it's a nice gentle fiber. So patients do really well with that as well if you're looking for some extra fiber.
Yeah, that's a great tip. So last but not least, when I was reading your article in March, one of the one of the paragraphs had to do with a new novel treatment, let's just say, I guess, for, treating or healing the gut microbiome, something called fecal transplant. And I'm like, I have to ask her about this because I'm sure everybody reading that like stopped in mid-sentence, like, what? What is that?
Well, it's an interesting treatment. There has been some success with the idea of taking the stool from a healthy individual and inserting it rectally into another individual. Obviously, it's not a direct, there's a process that actually makes it a clean process or a clean procedure, but they insert that fecal matter into a person who doesn't have adequate bacteria to help replenish and recolonize. And it makes sense. I mean, you're taking the healthy bacteria colony from someone else and putting it into another person with the idea that once it's in there, if it's got a happy environment, those little microbes, those bacteria are going to grow and colonize and restore the bacteria of the individual. There's all kinds of questions that come up because there is an interaction between the microbes and our DNA. And so whether, that would have any impact from person to person, we don't know. And if there's some people that are going to be more susceptible to the bacteria makeup, so each person's colony is a little bit different. And that, again, starts with what we get from our mother. So whether or not there's going to be adverse effects there, we don't really know yet. It's not readily available as a treatment. There are places that you can go, but there's really only certain diagnoses and conditions where it's approved in certain parts of the world. So it is a really interesting prospect. I think some people just get grossed out about the idea. I'm not sure how many people would really get in line to have somebody else's poop inserted into them.
Exactly.
But it's another way to really look at recolonizing the gut. And there are parts of the gut that are more, aren't going to be as ready to receive the bacteria we take in a probiotic. So there's even some discussion of if we take a probiotic orally, by the time it passes through all of our stomach acids, does it ever actually even reach the colon at the end of our GI tract? And we hope that it does, and we think that it does because symptoms improve. But unless we're actually looking at the colonization at it along the way of each part of the gut, we don't really know for sure. And that's something to look, that it'd be really interesting to see them do more evaluation of the microbiome, in time and study that a little bit more. So
Yep.
When we have something like diarrhea, which is a lower GI issue, we lose everything. When we have diarrhea, when we have vomiting, the body gets rid and is expelling the good with the bad. So there are times when we really need to look at replenishing that. And the fecal transplant might be the way to do it.
Yeah.
So
do not try this at home.
Not, definitely.
Right, exactly.
I can't even think of who I would want to try it with.
We have to put that disclaimer though, because I'm I'm imagining all these shows that you see, like with these crazy people doing something they saw on TV.
It'll be on that ER show, when they have those extreme ER visits.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, too funny. But something, fascinating and something to watch for sure, as who knows, a potential novel treatment. Definitely. Cool. Well, this is awesome. Thank you again so much for your time and all of the great information. So how can people reach out to you, get a hold of you? How do you want them to connect with you?
They can connect through my website. So my website is www.coastalnaturalmedicine.com. And my office phone number is 475-999-2032. You can also email at info@coastalnaturalmedicine.com. And I do 15-minute phone complimentary consults for patients to see if it's a good fit, to see if there's any questions I can answer for you. And right now, insurance companies are being really lenient, as is my malpractice insurance, about doing phone and online visits. So telehealth is a great way right now to do visits. Some insurances cover that new patient visit, some do not. I am still seeing new patients in the office. I'm just really limiting them and spreading them out so that I have time to clean the office. There's not as many people in there at once. And anytime I can do anything online right now, I will. So if you have questions about those things, certainly give us a call. That's a new process for all of us. So we're figuring that out as we go. But please, don't hesitate to reach out. If you have questions, we can certainly set something up for when this is all over. But if you have the opportunity to make that effort and put that call out, I'd be happy to work with you, answer whatever questions that you might have, and if it's a good fit, to set up that initial consultation.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So,
You're
yeah.
definitely a wealth of information, so we appreciate it. And you can find
Thank you.
Dr. Firisin's latest article on the gut microbiome in our March 2020 issue in Natural Nutmeg. Our website is www.naturalnutmeg.com, and you can just click on, well, as of tomorrow, actually, the April new issue will be up, but if you go to back issues, and you can click on our March 2020 issue and find her article. And you can also find us on Facebook at Natural Nutmeg Magazine. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We recorded this call, so we'll have it emailed out and put up on our social and websites shortly. And thanks again, Katy. Great to have you.
Thank you. And blessings to everyone out there who's struggling, and I have a lot of patients who really are just scheduling appointments, and we end up just talking about what's going on. So really don't hesitate to reach out to my office for anything at all, whether it's an appointment or not. I know people are really struggling out there. So, blessings to everyone, keeping everyone in my prayers and good thoughts. So this will be over soon.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
Absolutely.
Diane.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.